I still remember that fateful night. Not just because of the thick, metallic scent of blood in the air, but because of the utter despair in my soul, where the light of hope had shattered like fragments of glass beneath my feet. It was a torrential rain, the cold drops lashing my face like the icy fingers of fate, pushing me into the dead end of a dark, damp alley, where only the whistling wind and the frantic thumping of my heart echoed like an empty drum. I slipped, falling headfirst into a pile of foul-smelling trash, struggling with all my might to cover the bleeding wound on my arm. Physical pain had merged with extreme fear, creating a whirlpool in my mind, sucking me into a dark abyss of helplessness. The heavy footsteps behind me were no longer an illusion. They were a harsh reality, the knocking of death coming closer. I knew I couldn't escape. Those 3 men. Their faces were etched into my memory, their repulsive smiles, their greedy eyes, and the hidden cruelty. They wanted me. They wanted revenge for a debt I didn't even know I owed. They had ruined my life, turning me from an ordinary girl into a wanderer, homeless, constantly living in fear. Now, they wanted to take the last thing I had left, my life. "You little bitch!" a coarse voice roared, sounding like gravel grinding together. He stepped out of the darkness, his face rugged, his beady eyes sparkling with malice under the dim streetlight. The strong stench of alcohol and cigarettes wafted from him, making me want to vomit. "Did you think you could escape us? After everything your family did?" A rough, heavy hand grabbed my hair, yanking my head back. A sharp pain pierced my skin, shooting up to my scalp, making my eyes water. My vision was blurred by the rain and hot tears, mixing together into a bitter, salty stream. I saw the man's ferocious eyes, glinting under the faint street lamp, reflecting a savage glee. I spat in his face, a reflexive act of despair rather than courage. My saliva stuck to his cheek, and he let out a furious roar, his other hand delivering a slap that felt like a bolt of lightning. My cheek burned, and the coppery taste of blood flooded my mouth. I felt a loose tooth in my jaw, and a warm stream of blood trickled down the corner of my lip. The slap was so powerful my head was ringing, and my vision swam. "You're a tough one, aren't you?" The second man spoke, his voice high-pitched, hissing like a venomous snake. He pulled a gleaming dagger from his belt, the blade reflecting the streetlight coldly, like an omen of impending death. "Let's see how tough you are when I carve strips of flesh from your body, you stray dog." He brought the blade close to my face. I could feel the cold draft from the sharp metal. The rusty smell of dried blood on the blade stung my nose, making my stomach churn. My heart hammered frantically, thumping, as if trying to escape my ribcage. No, I couldn't die here. I couldn't die so meaninglessly. My parents. They were gone because of men like these. I had to live to find the truth, to take revenge. But how could I seek revenge when I was so weak and helpless? Tears streamed down my cheeks, mixing with the rain, salty and bitter. Every drop carried immeasurable despair. I felt my body slowly giving up, like a piece of rotten straw in a flash flood. Just when I thought it was over, when the cold blade was pressed against my throat, I heard a sound. A strange one, a sound that didn't belong to the darkness and chaos of this alley. It wasn't the rain, nor the wind, nor the savage laughter of the men surrounding me. It was the powerful, low growl of an engine, like a colossal beast waking from hibernation. A sleek, unbelievably luxurious black car glided to a stop, its blinding headlights shining directly into our faces, turning everything around us into a white haze. The dazzling light momentarily blinded the thugs. They flinched, instinctively releasing me and stepping back, their faces laced with panic. A tall figure, almost a statue carved from the night, stepped out of the car. Under the headlights, I could only make out a majestic silhouette, a dark suit without a single wrinkle, emphasizing broad shoulders and a lean waist, jet black hair slightly damp with rain, and eyes. I couldn't see them clearly, but I felt a deadly coldness, an absolute power emanating from him. He stood there, unmoving, expressionless, like a god of death who had just descended, bringing with him an aura of coldness and danger. Every step the man took was steady, decisive, as if he were walking on the red carpet of a world where he was the master. "What are you doing here?" The man's voice rang out, deep but full of authority, like a cold stream flowing deep underground. It wasn't loud, but it had the power to make the three thugs shiver, like small rats encountering a cat. "This is my territory. You have crossed the line." My territory. The phrase sank into my mind, carrying an undeniable threat. Who was he? Another crime boss? Someone with so much power that even these vicious thugs were trembling? A frail, pitiful glimmer of hope began to flicker within me, a weak spark in the night of despair. The man with the knife chuckled scornfully, trying to regain his ferocity, but his voice betrayed a distinct tremble. "Who the hell are you? Don't interfere in our business. You don't know who we are." In an instant, I didn't see him move, but the sharp snap of breaking bone echoed in the air, followed by a heart-wrenching groan of pain from the thug. The man had taken one down with terrifying speed. A powerful sweep kick, and the man was on the ground, clutching his clearly broken shin. His strength was terrifying, far exceeding anything I had ever seen, the power of someone who held others' lives in the palm of his hand. The remaining two men panicked, pulling guns from their belts. The metallic clink startled me, but Kyle... The man didn't flinch. He just looked at them, his eyes sharp as ice, devoid of any fear. Under the dim headlights, I caught a glimpse of his sharp facial features, a high nose bridge, thin lips, and an absolute determination. That was Kyle. The name suddenly appeared in my mind, though I had never heard it before, but it sounded so powerful and mysterious. "You have two choices," Kael's low voice rang out, completely emotionless, like a verdict from the grave. "One is to drop your weapons and disappear. Two is to..." The man didn't finish his sentence. Instead, a sharp smack was heard, and a gun flew out of the second thug's hand, falling into a puddle. Kael had moved too fast, like an illusion, a passing shadow. He grabbed the man's wrist, twisted it, and the sickening crack was heard again. The thug's wrist was broken. He screamed in agony, collapsing to the ground, clutching his injured arm. The last man, the one who had slapped me, was now utterly drained of color. He trembled, the gun in his hand pointed aimlessly, not daring to aim at the terrifying man. My protector stared at him, his eyes now clearer to me, though only glimpses of reflected light. They were deep, icy, black holes, dark as a bottomless abyss, devoid of any humanity. I felt a chill run down my spine, but strangely, the fear wasn't entirely for myself. It was for the thug standing before him, the one facing death. "I'll give you one last chance," Kyle said, his voice now a whisper of the Grim Reaper, chilling to the bone. "Get out of my sight. Right now. And never think of coming back to this area." The thug didn't hesitate for a second. He threw the gun to the ground, turned, and ran for his life into the darkness, not daring to look back, like a hunted animal. Kyle didn't pursue him. He just stood there, unmoving, like a steel monument in the rain, formidable and terrifying. After the three men had vanished into the night, the space became eerily silent, with only the sound of the falling rain and my own heavy, ragged breathing. I was still huddled on the ground, trembling, blood and tears mingling on my face. I looked at Kyle, the man who had appeared like a ghost from the dead to save me. I didn't know who he was, why he was here, or why he helped me. But I knew one thing. He was not an ordinary man. The power emanating from him was too great, too overwhelming, making me feel so small and weak. My protector turned around and walked closer. Each of his steps was confident, powerful, as if he were walking on an invisible red carpet, without a moment's hesitation. I instinctively flinched, feeling a mixture of fear and curiosity. Although he had just saved me, the man's presence still exuded a terrifying danger, a latent threat. His shadow stretched long on the damp ground, enveloping me, making me feel as if I were being swallowed by his darkness. He knelt on one knee in front of me, his deep black eyes looking straight into mine. I tried to avoid his gaze, but an invisible force seemed to hold me tight. I felt mesmerized by his eyes, by his cold, perfect face, every feature sharp as if sculpted from stone. His jet black hair fell over his forehead, wet, further enhancing his lethal mystery and charm. "Are you all right?" Kael's deep voice sounded, yet with a certain distance, a hidden coldness. It wasn't a question full of concern, but an affirmation of my state, a declaration. I nodded, trying to force out a sound. My voice was hoarse, weak, like a faint whisper of the wind. I'm all right. Just a little scared." He reached out a hand, his fingers long, strong, and slender, yet full of power. I looked at that hand, hesitating slightly. I didn't know if I should trust this man, but I had no other choice. I placed my trembling hand in his palm. The man's hand was surprisingly warm, and his grip was so firm, like an unbreakable vice. He gently pulled me to my feet, as if I were a fragile object, a precious porcelain doll. When I stood up, I realized how small I was next to him. He was tall, muscular, but not bulky, exuding a cold, sharp beauty, like a sculpture carved from black marble. His entire presence radiated a cold, sharp beauty, like a sculpture carved from black marble. The man's scent. It was leather, expensive tobacco, and a hint of warm cedarwood, mixed with the smell of rain and a subtle trace of blood. It was the scent of power, luxury, and danger, a scent that both frightened and captivated me. He stared at the bleeding wound on my arm, then glanced at the clear bruise on my cheek. I felt a surge of shame. I looked down at my tattered clothes, stained with dirt and blood. I looked pitiful, like an abandoned animal. I'm fine. The wound isn't very deep." "No, you're not fine," Kael's voice was absolute, allowing no argument. "The wound needs immediate attention. Get in the car. Right now." The powerful man didn't ask for my opinion. He didn't give me a choice. It was a command. A command I couldn't disobey, an order I felt compelled to follow instinctively. I knew, somehow, I was drawn into his world. A world I didn't know, a world of darkness and power, where he was the supreme ruler. I walked towards his sleek black car. It wasn't a typical car. It was a luxurious limousine with dark bulletproof windows and a shiny steel body. Clearly, he was a man of influence, someone others feared and obeyed. I sat in the back seat, my body still trembling from the cold and fear. The soft, cool leather upholstery was under my hand, but it offered a luxury I had never experienced. Kael sat in the seat next to me, closing the door. The sound of the door closing was heavy, like the lock of a luxurious prison, a golden cage. He didn't say anything. He just sat there, silent, his eyes fixed straight ahead, without a single expression. The space inside the car was suffocating. I felt trapped in a beautiful but terrifying snare. My eyes kept darting towards the man, trying to find a clue about the identity of this mysterious man, about his intentions. "What's your name?" Kael suddenly asked, breaking the tense silence. "Elara," I answered, my voice still trembling. "Elara Vance." He nodded slightly, a small but powerful gesture. "Elara, a beautiful name, just like you." He paused, then continued. "I am Kael. Kael Thorne. Remember that name? Kael Thorne. The name." It sounded strangely familiar, like an echo from the past, but I couldn't place it. It concealed something terrifying, a secret I didn't know, a truth waiting to be revealed. But at that moment, I was too tired, too panicked to think clearly. I just wanted to escape this nightmare, to escape the fear that was haunting me. "Thank you." "Thank you, Kael, for saving me," I said, feeling choked up, a sense of sincere gratitude swelling within me. I don't know what I would have done without you. He turned to look at me, his gaze sweeping over my face, pausing at the bruise on my cheek. I felt a coldness in his eyes, a hidden anger, like a black flame burning. No one is allowed to touch what belongs to me. Those who dare will pay the price. That sentence, it startled me. What belongs to me? I wasn't a possession. I was a human being. But he said it with absolute confidence, as if it were an undeniable truth, a self-evident fact. I felt a surge of fear, but at the same time, another strange feeling crept into my mind. It was safety. A feeling of safety I hadn't felt in a very long time, a feeling of absolute protection. The car started to move, leaving the dark alley, merging into the flow of the city. I looked out the window, the scenery blurred by the rain, the neon lights flashing past like ghostly streaks of light. I didn't know where I was going, didn't know what my future held. But I knew one thing. My life had completely changed from the moment Cale Thorne appeared. He had pulled me out of the abyss, but at the same time, he had also pulled me into his own world, a world I found both terrifying and strangely captivating. We drove through the busy streets of the city, but inside the car, I felt like I was in a separate space, completely isolated from the outside world. Cale remained silent, his eyes fixed on the window, but I had the feeling he was watching me, observing my every move. I tried to shrink into myself, feeling ashamed of my tattered, dirty appearance. The smell of mud and dried blood still clung to me, a stark contrast to the car's luxury. The car stopped in front of a glass and steel skyscraper, soaring into the night sky, like a needle piercing the clouds. The light from inside the building radiated out, creating a brilliant halo, attracting every gaze. This was a place I had only ever seen in movies, a symbol of absolute wealth and power, a world completely different from the one I had lived in. A man in a sharp black suit, tall and solemn, opened the car door for us. He bowed respectfully to Cale, a gesture of absolute deference. "Welcome back, Mr. Thorne." The bodyguard's voice was deep and polite. Cale only nodded slightly, a small but powerful gesture, then turned to me. "Come inside. You need rest." I stepped out of the car, feeling dizzy from the building's magnificence. The spacious lobby was paved with marble that shone like a mirror, expensive artwork hung on the walls, and crystal chandeliers sparkled like stars in the sky. I felt utterly out of place, like a mouse that had stumbled into a palace, an outsider in this world of luxury. Cale walked ahead of me, his steps steady, confident, without a moment's hesitation. Every step he took exuded an undeniable authority. He didn't need to say much. His presence alone was enough to command fear and respect from everyone around him. I followed him, trying not to reveal my confusion and panic. We entered a private, gold-plated elevator, decorated with intricate carvings. Cale pressed a button, and the elevator shot up at dizzying speed, almost silently. My ears popped, as if I were flying through the air. I looked into the mirror reflection on the elevator wall, and I saw my image. A girl with messy hair, dirty clothes, a pale face, with a clear bruise on her cheek. And next to me was Cale, the elegant, powerful man, without a single flaw, his face cold and perfect. The contrast between us was immense, making me feel even smaller and more useless, like something discarded. When the elevator stopped at the highest floor and the doors opened, I found myself in a vast, unbelievably luxurious penthouse apartment. Floor-to-ceiling glass windows stretched across the apartment, overlooking a panoramic view of the city, brilliant with nightlights, like a silk carpet woven from light. The furniture was made from the most expensive materials. Unique art sculptures were placed everywhere. Every item exuded exquisite beauty and value. This wasn't a house. It was a private art museum, a palace of opulence. "You can take a bath. Clothes will be prepared for you," Cale said, his voice expressionless, yet carrying an unarguable command. He pointed to a door made of precious, intricately carved wood. "The bathroom is there. Relax." I didn't say anything, just nodded, feeling an overwhelming exhaustion. I walked into the bathroom, and once again, I was stunned by its splendor. A large marble bathtub, gold faucets, and expensive bottles of shower gel and shampoo were neatly arranged on the shelf, exuding a gentle fragrance. I took off my dirty clothes, letting them fall to the floor, as if shedding the burden of the past. I looked into the mirror, and I saw a strange look staring back at me. It was me, but not me. I had changed too much, lost too much. I was no longer the innocent girl of the past. I immersed myself in the warm bathwater, feeling my muscles relax, the tension melting away. The warm steam soothed my physical wounds, easing the aches, but it couldn't soothe the pain in my soul. I wondered, would my life ever return to normal? Could I escape Kyle world? Or had I been permanently drawn into it, unable to break free? When I stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped in a soft robe, I saw a new set of clothes laid out on the bed. It was a silk pajama set in jade green, soft against my skin. I put it on, feeling an unprecedented luxury, a sense of being cherished. Kyle was sitting on a large sofa, reading a book, the light from the floor lamp shining down on his face. He didn't look up when I entered. The man just spoke, without looking at me, his voice deep. "Are you hungry?" "You haven't eaten all day." I nodded, my stomach letting out a small growl. I'm hungry. Very hungry." He picked up the phone, spoke a few sentences in a decisive, commanding tone. Just a few minutes later, a woman in a neat uniform walked in, pushing a trolley laden with food. It was a lavish meal, with dishes I had never seen before, exquisitely decorated like works of art. "Eat," Kyle said, closing the book and placing it on the table. "Afterward, we'll talk. There's a lot that needs to be settled." I sat down at the dining table, feeling an intense tension enveloping me. I knew this conversation would decide my fate. I tried to eat, but the delicious food seemed to lose all flavor. I felt a nervous anticipation rise in my chest. What did he want from me? Why did he save me? And most importantly, was he a good man, or was he just a wolf in sheep's clothing, a dangerous man hiding his true intentions? Kale's gaze never left me. He wasn't eating. He was just watching me, his deep black eyes seeming to pierce my soul. That look made me feel like an animal trapped in a cage, being observed, judged, without any privacy. I swallowed hard, feeling my throat dry. "Ilara," Kale began, his voice still deep, but full of authority, allowing no resistance. "What trouble did you cause? Why were those men looking for you? It seems you're caught in a big mess." I looked at him, a panic rising in my chest. Should I tell him the truth? Would he believe me? Or would he see me as a liar? A troublemaker? I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, a decision that would change everything. I don't know, I said, my voice fading, weak. They talked about a debt of my family's. But I don't know what debt it is. My family had no wealth or power. Kale raised an eyebrow, a small but thoughtful gesture. A debt? Who was your family? Were they involved in my world? My parents. They died in an accident 2 years ago, I said, my voice trembling as I mentioned them, an old pain surging back. They had no enemies. I don't understand why they talked about that debt. We were just an ordinary family. Kale was silent for a long moment, his eyes seeming to contemplate something deep and complex. He stared intently at me, his deep black eyes seemingly piercing my soul, searching for a lie. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. So you know absolutely nothing about those men? He asked, his voice still expressionless, but carrying a sharp probe. Not a single piece of information? I shook my head, despair evident on my face. No, I've never met them before. I don't know any of them. The man stood up, walked to the large window, looking out at the city, his back broad and sturdy, like a fortified wall. What was the leader's name? Did they mention any name? He didn't say a name, I said, trying to recall every detail of that night. I only know they talked about Vance's debt. And they mentioned a name. Blackwood. I heard it clearly. As the name Blackwood left my lips, I saw Cale freeze. His shoulders stiffened, his muscles tensed, like an animal preparing to strike. Although he didn't turn to face me, I could sense a change in the atmosphere around him. A deadly coldness, a latent danger, a black flame of anger erupting in his eyes. He turned around, his eyes now not just cold, but filled with absolute rage, a deep-seated hatred, as if he were looking at a mortal enemy. I felt like I was standing before an awakened monster, a destructive force. Blackwood? He repeated, his voice low, hoarse, like the growl of a predator about to pounce. Are you sure? Did you hear it clearly? I nodded, frightened by the man's sudden change. Yes. I heard them mention that name. I couldn't be mistaken. Cale was silent, his gaze distant, as if lost in painful memories, old scars. I saw a flicker of pain cross his deep black eyes, a faint spark of human emotion hidden beneath the cold exterior. But it vanished quickly, replaced by an iron resolve, an unshakable will. No one is allowed to touch my people, Cale said, his voice echoing in the large room, like an undeniable declaration. You are mine, Elara. From now on, no one will touch you and live. That sentence. It wasn't a declaration of love, but a statement of possession, an affirmation of absolute power. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I was his? I couldn't believe my ears. But looking into Cale's determined eyes, I knew he meant it. He wasn't joking. He had saved me, and now he demanded that I become his. I felt like a small bird that had just escaped the claws of a cat, only to fall into the golden cage of an eagle, imprisoned but protected. And I wondered, was that a promise or a life sentence? The following days passed like a strange, half-awake dream inside a gilded cage. I, Elara Vance, now lived in Cale Thorne's luxurious penthouse, completely isolated from the outside world I once knew. The apartment was so vast I could get lost in it, with splendid rooms and amenities I had never even dreamed of. Every morning, I woke up in a soft bed, covered with smooth silk, and looked out over the city under the sunrise, the skyscrapers sparkling like giant diamonds. It was magnificent, but also terribly cold, like a constant reminder that I was in a cage, no matter how beautiful it was. The powerful man, Cale. He remained a mystery to me. He was often absent during the day, dealing with business I wasn't privy to, but I figured it involved his underground empire. When he returned, the penthouse seemed to come alive, yet also grew tenser, as if a powerful energy enveloped the space. I always felt an invisible pressure when he was near, a mixture of fear, respect, and something else I dared not name, an irresistible attraction. He treated me like a prized possession, an asset to be protected and meticulously cared for. I had servants preparing my meals, cleaners keeping the apartment spotless, and even a stylist came to prepare clothes for me whenever I needed to go out, under the strict supervision of invisible bodyguards. I had everything I needed, but I lacked freedom. I often sat by the large window, looking down at the bustling streets, the cars moving like ants, trying to recall my life before Cale appeared. The memories of my parents, our small house, our simple dreams. They were becoming increasingly blurred, like smoke vanishing into the air, slowly being replaced by my new world. I felt a profound sadness, a deep longing for what was lost, for a normal life that no longer existed. But at the same time, I also felt an emptiness, a strange acceptance. Perhaps this was my fate. Perhaps I was destined to be a part of this powerful man's world, a part of his darkness. On the rare evenings when Cale was home, he would often work in his private study, filled with ancient books and confidential documents, or sit in the living room reading, his sharp gaze scanning the pages. I could hear the soft, steady tapping of a keyboard or the gentle rustle of a turning page in the quiet space. I usually tried to avoid the man, feeling uneasy being around such a mysterious and powerful figure, one who seemed to be able to read my mind. But he always knew where I was. His eyes, even when seemingly focused on his book, were always scrutinizing, observing my every movement, like an eagle watching its prey. One evening, as I was flipping through TV channels, trying to find something to kill time, Kael walked into the living room. He took off his black suit jacket, draped it over a chair, then slowly loosened his tie. I caught a glimpse of his solid muscles beneath his white shirt, the powerful contours of a well-trained man. He sat down in the chair opposite me, picked up a glass of red wine, his eyes glinting under the lamplight. "Can't sleep, Ilara." Kael's deep voice sounded, but there was no softness, only a cold concern. I was startled, trying to hide my awkwardness. I'm not really sleepy. I'm thinking too much." He took a sip of wine, his eyes looking straight at me, deep and probing. "The bruise on your cheek is much better. Your complexion is healthier now, too." I gently touched my cheek. It was true. The bruise had almost disappeared, thanks to the special ointments the maid applied every day. "Yes. Thank you, Kael." The powerful man put down his wineglass, then folded his hands, looking intently at me, as if I were a puzzle to be solved. "We need to talk seriously about what happened. Ilara, I need the truth." My heart quickened a little, a nervous flutter in my chest. I knew this day would come. I've told Kael everything I know. I haven't hidden anything. "You said those men mentioned the name Blackwood," Kael said, his voice becoming a little sharper, like a knife edge. "Are you sure about that? No mistake?" "Yes, I'm sure," I affirmed, my voice resolute. I couldn't forget it. It was like a dagger in my heart when I heard that name. Blackwood. I heard it clearly. Kael was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on me, as if trying to read every thought in my mind, every hidden secret. The Blackwood family is a notorious crime syndicate. They have a vast network, from arms and drug trafficking to money laundering. They are my family's rivals, a formidable and ruthless opponent. I was startled. Rival? So Kael was also a part of the underworld? That explained the power and danger emanating from him, the luxury, and the mysterious bodyguards. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. Had I been drawn into a war between criminal families? That was terrifying, horrifying. I don't understand, I said, my voice weak, like a whisper. Why would they target me? I'm just an ordinary girl. I have no value in Kael's world. Kael stood up, walked to the large window, looking out at the city, his back looming large under the city lights. Nothing is a coincidence, Ilara. Especially not in my world. Every action has a purpose. Everyone has a place on the chessboard. You are not worthless. You are an important piece. But I am not a piece. I objected, a hint of indignation in my voice, trying to assert my independence. The powerful man turned around, his eyes sharp as daggers. Currently, you are an important piece. They made a mistake by touching you, and they will pay for it. Dearly. The anger in Kael's voice was frightening. It was chilling to the bone. I felt a shiver. But at the same time, I also felt a strange warmth surge within me. He was protecting me. He was fighting for me. Even though it was because he considered me his property, I still felt a sense of security I had never had, a feeling of absolute shelter. Kael, I want to help, I said, trying to sound strong, not wanting to be just a burden. If this is related to the Blackwood family, and if it's connected to my parents' death, I want to know the truth. I want to find out for myself. The powerful man stared at me, his eyes seemingly assessing me, examining my determination. You want to help? In this dangerous world? Yes, I insisted, my eyes looking straight at him. I can't sit around and wait anymore. I've lived in fear for too long. I want to fight. He walked closer to me, bending down, making me feel as if I were enveloped by his shadow. The man's scent. Leather, tobacco, and warm cedar wood surrounded me, making me feel dizzy. I could see every strand of his jet black hair, every sharp contour of his face, cold and perfect. I felt my heart pound frantically, as if trying to leap out of my chest. Good, Kyle whispered, his voice low, almost a growl, but with a hint of satisfaction. I like your resolve. But do you truly understand the world you want to enter, Ilara? My world has no room for weakness. It's full of deception, betrayal, and violence. Are you strong enough? I swallowed hard. I know, but I have nothing left to lose. I've already lost everything. The man looked at me for a long moment, his eyes seeming to probe deep into my soul, searching for a hint of doubt. Then he stood up straight, turning his back to me, looking out the window. All right, I'll give you a chance. But you must obey me. Completely. You are not allowed to do anything without my permission. I will obey Kyle, I said, feeling a new resolve surge within me, an iron will. I won't do anything foolish. Good, Kyle turned back to me. Do you have any special abilities, Ilara? Any skills that could be useful in finding information, in deciphering mysteries? I thought for a moment, trying to recall what I was good at. I have a pretty good memory, especially for faces and small details. I can recall what I've seen and heard, even if it was fleeting. Like a photographic memory. Kale raised an eyebrow, a slight smirk crossing his lips, a rare and dangerous smile. Interesting. Good visual and auditory memory. That could be useful. Very useful. He picked up a tablet from his desk, scrolling through the screen with his long, slender fingers. I've gathered some information about the men who attacked you. They are low-level henchmen of Blackwood. But the leader, the one who ordered them, is a different matter. A much more dangerous person. He turned the tablet screen towards me. Look closely at these photos. Do you recognize anyone among them? Look at every small detail. On the screen were dozens of photos of different men, faces grim, eyes full of malice. I focused on each face, each small detail, trying to activate my memory. Thousands of faces flashed before my eyes, but none I recognized. Until one face caught my attention, a face I had briefly seen in the dark. Him, I pointed to a photo. This face. He wasn't the direct leader, but he stood nearby, observing. His eyes were very cold, and he has a small crescent-shaped scar just below his right eye. He was the one giving the orders. Kale looked at the photo I pointed to, his eyes becoming sharper, like a dagger. This man, Arthur Vance, Richard Blackwood's brother, the head of the Blackwood Syndicate, a dangerous and cunning man. I was shocked. Vance? He has the last name Vance too? Is he a relative of mine? Not the same family, Kyle said, his voice slightly mocking. Just a coincidence. But his appearance there? Suggests your attack wasn't random. It was orchestrated by someone higher up. Someone who wanted to send a message. I saw him give a subtle command to the leader, I recalled, the memories of that terrifying night flooding back. He just nodded, and the men started acting more aggressively, as if they got a signal. He is the mastermind. Kale looked at me, a smirk crossing his lips, a dangerous yet attractive smile. Good memory indeed. That will help a lot. Ilara, you have officially become a part of this war. You are my eyes, my ears, and mine. No one is allowed to take you from me. The phrase mine echoed again, emphasizing Kael's absolute ownership. I felt a tension in my chest, a struggle between fear and acceptance. Did I hate him for it? Or had I begun to accept it, even finding a strange comfort in it? I didn't know. I only knew that, in a world full of instability, Kael's possession offered a strange sense of security and absolute protection. In the following days, Kael and I spent more time working together. He provided me with documents, photos, and recordings about the Blackwood family, their operations, their secret connections. I used my memory to search for small details, for connections others might overlook, for the missing pieces in the larger puzzle. I discovered that Kael wasn't just a wealthy and powerful man. He was also a brilliant strategist, a man who was cold and ruthless when necessary, but also possessed a sharp intellect. He ran a vast empire, including both legitimate businesses and underground activities, all under his control. He didn't hesitate to use violence to achieve his goals, but he also had his own rules, principles he never broke, his own code of law. I began to see other sides of the man, human aspects hidden beneath the cold exterior. One evening, when I was working in his study, I saw Kael playing with a large dog, a Rottweiler named Hades. He was stroking it gently, talking to it in a completely different tone than he used with others, a voice full of affection. Hades rubbed his head against his hand, his eyes looking at him with trust and love, like a child. I watched Kael, feeling a surge of surprise. That ruthless, cold man. Could he be so gentle? That image completely shattered the wall I had built around him, a wall of danger and cruelty. Hades is a good friend, Kael said, as if reading my mind. He didn't turn to look at me, just continued stroking the dog. He's loyal, and he never betrays. In this world, loyalty is a rare commodity. That sentence, it held a deep meaning for me. He was talking about loyalty and betrayal. Had he been betrayed before? I wondered if that was why he was so cold and wary. I walked closer, sitting on the floor, and Hades looked up at me, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. I reached out to pet him, and he snorted affectionately, nudging his head against my hand. Hades is beautiful, I said. How long have you had him? Since he was a puppy, Kael said, his voice still calm, but with a hint of warmth. I rescued him from animal abusers. They tried to kill him. Another surprise. Kael, rescuing animals? That completely contradicted the image of a ruthless, cold man he usually portrayed, an image I had believed. I felt a faint spark of light in my soul. Perhaps he wasn't entirely a monster. Perhaps there was still a part of humanity within him, a soft and loving side. The more I interacted with Kael, the more I felt a struggle within me. On one hand, I was afraid of him, afraid of the world he lived in, afraid of what he could do. On the other hand, I was attracted to him. I was drawn to his strength, the protection he offered me, the surprising aspects of his character. I despised myself for it. How could I be attracted to a man who might be the son of the enemy who took my family? It was disgusting, wrong, a betrayal of my parents' memory. But I couldn't deny my feelings. Every time Kael was near, I felt an electric current run down my spine, an uncontrollable tremor. Every time he touched me, even a slight brush, I felt my heart race, as if trying to leap out of my chest. I hated him for making me feel these things, hated him for shaking my principles, hated him for making me fall for a dangerous man. But I couldn't control it. He was a flame, and I was a moth irresistibly drawn to him, accepting the fate of being consumed. Kael also began to share small stories about his past, memories of his family, of the people he had lost, the unhealed scars. He didn't say much, but each story revealed a part of his true self, the deep scars in his soul, the pain he had endured. I realized that he was also a lonely person, a man carrying much pain. He lost his mother when he was young, and he had to shoulder an entire empire at a very young age, the burden of a powerful family. Those stories made me see him in a different light. I no longer just saw a ruthless, cold man. I saw a damaged man, a man who had to fight to survive in a harsh world full of peril. And I began to feel a strange empathy for him, a connection I didn't want, an invisible thread that bound us together. One evening, as we sat on the balcony overlooking the city, the lights twinkling like stars below, Kael turned to look at me. His eyes became a little softer, a rare gentleness I had never seen, making my heart tremble. "Elara," he said, his voice deep, thoughtful. "Do you hate me? For everything I've done? For my world?" The question startled me. I looked into his eyes, trying to find the most honest answer. Hate? Yes, I hated him for making me afraid, for controlling my life, for pulling me into his darkness. But at the same time, I didn't hate him. He saved me. He protected me. And he gave me a sense of security I had never had, a feeling of belonging. I don't know, I answered honestly. I'm afraid of Kael, but I also thank Kael. And I can't leave Kael. Kael smirked, a rare and mysterious smile. Fear is a good thing. It helps you survive. But remember, Elara, I will never hurt you. You are mine, and I will protect you at all costs. Anyone who dares to touch you will face my retribution. His words. They carried a heavy weight. It was both a promise and a threat, an affirmation of absolute power. I felt a tension in my chest, a struggle between fear and dependence. I had been completely drawn into his world, unable to escape. But was that a bad thing? Could I find peace in his arms? Or would I be consumed by his darkness, becoming a part of it? And I wondered, was this love, or just a dangerous dependence, a golden cage I couldn't escape? The false peace within Kael's gilded cage didn't last long. Even as I slowly grew accustomed to the luxury and the man's protection, the darkness of the underworld was lurking, and it had begun to stretch its cold tentacles to touch me, like a monster hiding in the shadows. I thought I was safe, thought Kael's embrace was strong enough to shield me from all danger. But I was wrong. The first threat arrived in the form of an unwelcome package, delivered right to Kael's luxurious penthouse. One morning, as I was drinking coffee on the balcony, watching the brilliant sunrise, one of Kael's bodyguards brought a silver-wrapped gift box, with no sender, no sign whatsoever. I looked at it with suspicion, a sense of unease rising within me. Since living with Kael, I had learned to be wary of everything, to recognize the signs of danger. I didn't dare open it. I had a bad feeling. When Kael returned in the afternoon, I gave him the package. The man's face was expressionless, but I sensed an unusual tension in the air, an eerie silence. He used a small, sharp knife to slice the wrapping paper, then opened the box. Inside, it wasn't a gift, but a broken silver necklace. It was my mother's necklace. The necklace she always wore around her neck, a precious heirloom passed down through generations in my family, a priceless keepsake. And next to it, an old, yellowed photograph showing me and my parents when I was a child, our faces beaming with happiness. On the back of the photo, a message was written in bright red ink, red as blood, shaky and full of menace. Vance's daughter, the debt will be paid. You are ours. My heart stopped. My entire body trembled, like a dry leaf in the wind. My breath seemed to be choked off, the air around me becoming thin. Those men. They had found my mother's necklace. They had found my family's keepsakes. They knew about my past. And they were threatening me openly, a declaration of war. The debt will be paid. It was a warning, a life sentence, a curse. Kael looked at the necklace and the photo, his eyes turning into deep black holes, like two black holes swallowing all light, all hope. An absolute fury surged in those eyes, a terrifying, cold indignation, making me shiver. He clenched his fists, knuckles white, as if wanting to crush everything. Blackwood, Kael growled. the name leaving his lips like a curse, full of hatred. They dare. They dare to touch what is mine. I felt an intense fear envelop me. I was no longer his captive, but a target, a pawn in the deadly game between the two families. I looked at Kyle, the man who had promised to protect me. Could he protect me from the men who caused my parents' death? From the ones who were hunting me? Was he strong enough to fight an entire criminal empire? Kyle, what do they want? My voice was shaky, weak. He turned to look at me, his eyes cold but resolute, without any wavering. They want you. They want to use you against me, to weaken me. But they will never succeed. You are mine, Ilara. No one is allowed to touch what is mine. I will protect you at all costs. Kale's voice was not just a declaration of possession, but a vow, an absolute commitment. It carried a heavy weight, making me both frightened and strangely comforted. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, the image of the broken necklace and the threatening message haunting my mind, repeating like a horror movie. I felt an intense unease, a feeling that danger was very near, that I was being watched. The next morning, as I was having breakfast, Kyle sat across from me, his face somber, thoughtful, as if facing a major problem. He placed a thick file on the table, an old, yellowed dossier. I found more information about your parents' accident, Kale said, his voice deep, heavy. It's much more complicated than I thought. There are secrets I never knew. My heart pounded, a surge of anticipation in my chest. What is it, Kyle? Please tell me. He pushed the file towards me, his eyes looking straight at me, as if preparing me for a shock. I had my people investigate deeper. Your parents were not the primary targets. They were merely collateral damage. The real target of that attack was another man. A man they didn't even know. Who? I asked, my voice hoarse, full of dread. Kyle looked directly into my eyes, his eyes deep black, as if staring into a dark abyss. That man was Julian Thorne. My whole world seemed to collapse, shattering into 1,000 pieces. Julian Thorne. That name. It echoed in my head like a thunderbolt, stunning me. Julian Thorne. Kale's father? It can't be. I shook my head frantically, disbelieving what I had just heard. No. It can't be. Kyle. That's your father. You're lying. Kale remained silent, his eyes still looking straight at me, without a tremor, without a word of denial. Yes, Julian Thorne is my father, and he was the target of that assassination attempt. Those men were targeting him, but your parents were unintentionally caught in the crossfire. Their car was rigged with a bomb meant for Julian Thorne. Everything around me seemed to spin, the space becoming distorted. So, I had fallen in love with the son of the enemy. No, not the enemy, but the son of the man whom my parents' killers wanted to kill. My parents' death was caused by the attempt to assassinate Kyle's father. I had been drawn into this deadly spiral from the very beginning, a cruel joke of fate. A wave of anger and resentment surged within me, consuming everything, turning all other emotions into ash. I felt betrayed, deceived. I looked at Kyle, the man I had begun to trust, to have feelings for. He knew this? He knew this terrifying truth, but he hid it from me? You knew? I asked, my voice trembling with rage, tears beginning to well up. You knew all of this, but you hid it from me? Why? Kale didn't answer my question directly. He just looked at me, his eyes chillingly calm, yet I saw a flicker of pain in them. Ilara, listen to me. I didn't know your parents were there at the time. I've been investigating thoroughly, and I only recently discovered this truth. I wanted to protect you from this pain. Recently? I scoffed, a bitter, desperate laugh. So, how long were you planning to hide it from me? Until when would I find out that the person who caused my parents' death was the father of the man who saved me, and now I'm living under his son's protection? That's disgusting. I jumped to my feet, feeling an extreme pain in my heart, as if 1,000 knives were cutting into my soul. I hate you. I hate you and your world full of lies. I hate myself for loving you. Cale also stood up, walking closer to me, his face still cold but his eyes full of worry. I saw a flicker of pain in his eyes, a hidden remorse. Alara, I understand you're angry, but I don't want you to be hurt. I want to protect you from everything. Protect me? I roared, tears streaming down my cheeks, salty and bitter. How? By hiding the truth from me? By making me a pawn in your war? I don't want your protection. I want the truth. And I want justice for my parents. Let them rest in peace. Just as I spoke those words, a loud explosion sounded from outside the apartment, shaking the entire building. The glass windows rattled violently, as if they were about to shatter. A gunshot. Then another. The building's alarm blared deafeningly, piercing the stillness. Blackwood. They had come. They had found us. Kyle immediately pulled me into his arms, shielding me with his strong body. His body was hard, powerful, like a fortress wall. He signaled the ready bodyguards, his voice low but authoritative, completely fearless. Seal all exits. Don't let a single man through. Protect Alara at all costs. The gunshots continued to ring out, like fireworks. The sound of shattering glass, the shouts of the attackers and the bodyguards. Kale's luxurious penthouse had turned into a battlefield, a living hell. Kale pushed me behind a sturdy wall, a temporary safe place, then pulled out a gun from inside his suit jacket. He looked at me, his eyes turning cold and deadly, like a professional assassin. Stay here, Alara, Kale's voice sounded, utterly emotionless. Don't move. I'll be back. I'll destroy them. He rushed out, like a predator on the hunt, stepping into the fight without a moment's hesitation. I heard constant gunfire, shouts, crashing sounds. My heart pounded frantically. I covered my head, trying not to think about what was happening outside, about the deaths. I was terrified, but I also felt a surge of resentment. I wanted revenge. I wanted the people who killed my parents to pay. And I wanted to know if Kale was truly protecting me, or if he was just protecting his property, a precious possession. In the chaos, a dark figure snuck into the room, like a ghost. He wasn't one of Kyle's bodyguards. He was one of Blackwood's thugs. He held a gleaming knife, his eyes sparkling with malice, a repulsive smile on his lips. He saw me, and a sickening grin spread across his face, full of malicious satisfaction. Finally found the little bitch, he growled, his voice hoarse. Vance's debt will be paid right now. You will die. He lunged at me, the gleaming knife aimed directly at me. I screamed, desperate, a despairing cry. I had no weapon, no strength to fight him. I could only close my eyes, waiting for death to come. But death didn't come. Instead, I heard a sickening snap, and the thug's agonizing groan, a pathetic cry. I opened my eyes, and I saw Kyle. He had appeared like a phantom, grabbing the thug's neck, breaking it with just one hand. Blood splattered. Kyle's face was cold, expressionless, his eyes deep black, like a god of death who had just descended, showing no mercy. He threw the thug's corpse to the ground, without a hint of regret, like discarding a useless object. Then he turned to look at me, his eyes still filled with absolute rage, but also with possession. He walked closer to me, his eyes fixed on me, as if he were staring into the depths of my soul, wanting to read my every thought. No one is allowed to touch you, Kale said, his voice hoarse, full of authority, allowing no resistance. You are mine. Mine alone. Anyone who dares to lay a finger on you will die, He pulled me into his arms, hugging me tightly, a powerful embrace, as if he wanted me to dissolve into him. I felt his body tremble, not from fear, but from a profound indignation, a raging fury. He was protecting me, shielding me from all danger, from death. But at the same time, he was also asserting his ownership, an absolute possession. In his arms, I felt a strange safety, a peace in the storm, a feeling of belonging. He leaned down and kissed me on the lips. Kael's kiss was not a gentle one, but a passionate, possessive kiss, as if he wanted to devour me, to affirm that I was his, always his. I responded to that kiss, a mixture of fear, anger, and an undeniable yearning, an irresistible fascination. I hated myself for it. I hated that I was drawn to this man, whose father had indirectly caused my parents' death, the man who killed to protect me. The kiss deepened, becoming more passionate, more fervent, like a fire raging in the middle of a battle, consuming all reason. I felt my body flesh hot, my head spinning. He kissed down my neck, my collarbone, his hand threading into my hair, gripping tightly, holding me in place. I moaned, a weak sound escaping my throat, a sound of pleasure and fear. I hated him for making me feel these things, hated him for controlling me, hated him for making me his. But I couldn't resist. I was completely drawn to him, captivated by him, unable to escape. Gunshots and shouts still echoed from outside, but in Kael's arms, I seemed to forget everything. There was only him and me, in a moment of passion and possession, a moment between life and death. After everything had settled down, when the attackers were neutralized or killed, Kael released me. His face was still cold, but his eyes, looking at me, were still full of possession, full of protection. "I won't let anyone harm you," Kael said, his voice firm, without a tremor. "I will find the one who ordered this attack, and I will make them pay. At any cost. No one will escape my retribution." He didn't say we will find, but I will find. He was asserting his power, his right to vengeance. And I could only be a part of his plan, a witness, someone to be protected. I looked at him, my eyes still tearful. I was still angry, still resentful about the terrifying truth about his father. But I also knew that I couldn't leave him. I was completely trapped in his world, in his spiral, unable to break free. And I wondered, could I find love in Kael's darkness, or would I forever be torn between love and hatred? The days following the battle with Blackwood, Kael recovered quickly from his wounds, like a steel-forged monster, without a hint of weakness. But inside me, the wound remained, deep and painful, impossible to heal. I had accepted my love for him, accepted the darkness he brought. But I knew that in our world, happiness was never eternal. There was always a price to pay. And I had a premonition that the price would be very high, a price I couldn't imagine. Kael didn't say much after that night. He was just silent, his eyes becoming colder and deadlier, like a predator stalking its prey. I knew he was planning. He was preparing for an unforgiving revenge, an all-out war. And I could only sit and wait, like a small bird in a cage, watching my protector transform into a hunting beast, a god of destruction. A few days later, Kael vanished. He didn't say where he was going or what he would do. He just looked at me for a long time, his eyes deep, as if wanting to engrave my image into his mind, then turned and walked away, dissolving into the night. I felt an emptiness rise within me. The large penthouse suddenly became colder and lonelier than ever without him, like an abandoned palace. During Kael's absence, I lived in anticipation. Every phone call, every small sound startled me, making my heart race. I watched the news on TV, read online articles, trying to find any sign of the man's return, or what he was doing, what was happening in the underworld. And I found it. News about the Blackwood family began to appear frequently in the newspapers, on TV channels. Mysterious attacks, sudden bankruptcies of subsidiaries, suspicious deaths of high-ranking members of the syndicate. The people who were once arrogant were now meeting a miserable end. The police and FBI were involved, but there was no concrete evidence to prosecute anyone. However, everyone knew that an invisible hand was systematically destroying the Blackwood Empire. And I knew that hand belonged to Kyle. I felt a surge of horror when reading those news stories. Kale wasn't just taking revenge. He was annihilating. He was ruthless, cold, unforgiving, without a hint of mercy. But strangely, I also felt a strange satisfaction. It was revenge for my parents, for what the Blackwood family had done. Although it wasn't justice in the conventional sense, it was Kyle's justice, and it was being executed in the most brutal way. I despise myself for feeling those things. Who was I to support such brutality, such violence? I was a human being. I should have a conscience. But when I thought of my parents' faces, of the pain I had endured, I couldn't stop those dark emotions. I had been pulled into Kyle's darkness, and I had begun to accept it, to become a part of it. 3 days passed, as long as a century. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I could only wait. The weight was heavy, somber, like a giant black cloud covering my soul, without a single ray of light. I wondered, would Kyle return? Would he be safe? Or would he be consumed by the spiral of this war and never come back, leaving me alone in this world? On the third night, as the city was asleep, Kyle returned. The familiar sound of his car engine echoed below the building, breaking the stillness of the night. I immediately ran to the balcony, looking down. His sleek black car was parked at the entrance. A man stepped out of the car, not Kale, but one of his close bodyguards. He was helping Kale out, his face full of worry. Kyle. He was injured. His white shirt was stained with blood, a large wound on his shoulder, still oozing blood. His face was pale, but his eyes were still determined, still full of power, without a hint of weakness. He didn't groan, didn't cry out in pain. He just looked up at the balcony, his eyes searching for me, like a lighthouse in the dark. When our eyes met, a faint smirk crossed his lips, a weak but powerful smile, full of reassurance. I ran downstairs, without thinking, worry overriding all fear. The man, Kyle's bodyguard, was trying to support him into the elevator. I ran to Kyle's side, my trembling hand touching his arm. The blood was still flowing, hot and coppery. Kyle! I exclaimed, my voice choked, my heart tightening. You're hurt. Why were you so careless? The man looked at me, then at Kyle. Let me take you to the hospital, Mr. Thorne. The wound needs professional care. Kale shook his head, his eyes fixed on me, full of determination. No. Home. She will take care of me. I trust her. I was startled. Me? Take care of him? I didn't know anything about medicine. But when I looked into Kyle's determined eyes, I knew he wasn't joking. He wanted me to care for him. It was an absolute trust, a delegation. We took Kyle up to the apartment. The bodyguard had prepared a medical kit. I trembled as I looked at Kyle's wound. It was deep, and blood was still seeping out, soaking a patch of his shirt. I felt nauseated, but I also knew I had to be strong. I had to do this for him, for the man who protected me. Kyle sat down on a chair, slowly removing his shirt. I saw his solid muscles, his old scars, evidence of the battles he had fought, each scar a story. He had lived a life full of peril, full of violence. I followed the bodyguard's instructions, cleaning the wound, disinfecting it, then stitching it up. My hands were shaking, but I tried to stay calm, focusing on every stitch. Every time I touched Kyle, I felt an electric current run down my spine, an inexplicable tremor. I saw him wince in pain, but he didn't utter a single sound. He was a man of incredible strength, endurance, a god of suffering. When I finished stitching the wound, Kyle looked at me, his eyes becoming a little softer, a rare gentleness I had never seen, making my heart melt. "Thank you, Elara," he whispered, his voice hoarse from fatigue and pain. You did very well. You are the strongest woman I've ever known. I felt a warmth rise within me. I had helped him. I had cared for him. And he had seen me, acknowledged me. It was a feeling I had never had, a feeling of being valued. After the bodyguard left, I sat next to Cale. He leaned back in the chair, eyes closed, his breathing steady. I looked at his pale face, and I felt a deep worry surge within me. He had done all this for me. He had fought for me. He had sacrificed for me. I reached out my hand, gently stroking his jet black hair. He opened his eyes, looking at me. His eyes were deeper than ever, as if wanting to convey 1,000 unspoken things. Blackwood is annihilated, Kyle said, his voice hoarse, but full of resolve. Richard Blackwood is dead. Their entire empire has collapsed. There is no more threat. I heard those words, and I felt a strange relief. My parents were avenged. Although this was not the revenge I desired, it had happened. And Cale had done it for me, for his love for me. Cale, I said, my voice choked, tears streaming down my cheeks. Why did you do all this for me? You didn't have to sacrifice so much. He looked at me, his eyes sparkling with a strange light, a flash of dark love. Because you are mine, Alara, and I protect what is mine, at all costs. No one will touch you and live. I couldn't protect those I loved in the past. But you are my everything. He reached out, taking my hand, intertwining our fingers tightly. His hand was warm, strong. I couldn't protect my mother. I couldn't protect the people I loved in the past, the ones the world took from me. But you will be mine. And I will never let anyone touch you. I will die for you, if necessary. Those words. They weren't a conventional declaration of love, but a statement of possession, an absolute commitment, an eternal vow. I felt a deep tremor in my soul. He had made me his, and he had taken revenge for me. In his world, love was expressed through absolute protection, through cruelty towards enemies, through unconditional sacrifice. I looked into Cale's face, into his deep black eyes. I knew I had completely fallen for him. Fallen for a dangerous, ruthless man, a man who killed to protect me, a man full of darkness. That love was dark, wrong, but I couldn't deny it. It had ignited within me, consuming everything, all reason. I leaned down and placed a kiss on Cale's lips. My kiss was gentle, but full of affection, gratitude, and love. He responded to the kiss, softer, warmer, as if he were feeling my love. I love you, Kyle, I whispered, my voice trembling, tears streaming down again. I love you more than anything in this world. Cale hugged me tightly, a powerful embrace, as if he wanted to hold me forever, never letting go. You are mine, Alara, always mine. No one can take you from me, not even death. In that moment, I knew I had found my place. Not in the light, but in Cale's darkness. Not in peace, but in the chaos of his world. Our love was built on fear, revenge, and possession. But it was our love. And it was stronger than any fear. It was stronger than any resentment. And I wondered, could this love bring me peace? Or would it forever be a curse, an unhealable scar in my soul? The days following the battle with Blackwood, Cale recovered quickly from his wounds, like a steel-forged monster, without a hint of weakness. But inside me, the wound remained, deep and painful, impossible to heal. I had accepted my love for him, accepted the darkness he brought. But I knew that in our world, happiness was never eternal. There was always a price to pay. And I had a premonition that the price would be very high, a price I couldn't imagine. Cale had settled all feuds. The Blackwood Empire had completely collapsed, not a trace remaining. He had protected me, had taken revenge for me. But that revenge, although it brought me relief, couldn't fill the void in my heart. I knew that our lives couldn't be as peaceful as other couples. Darkness always lurked, and the past always haunted, like an unbanishable ghost. One afternoon, as the sunset cast streaks of red-orange across the sky, painting the entire space, Kael and I sat on the balcony, silently watching the city, silently together. He held me tightly in his arms, an embrace full of strength and gentleness, as if he wanted to keep me forever. I rested my head on his shoulder, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat, a strong and steady pulse. These were the rare moments of peace we had, moments I wanted to hold on to forever, never letting go. "Elara," Kael said, his voice deep, gentle, like a whisper of the wind. "I've done everything I can to protect you, so you can live the life you deserve." I looked up at him, my eyes tearful. "I know. And thank you, Kael. I love you, Kael. I will never forget what Kael has done for me." Kael kissed my hair, a kiss full of love, strangely tender. "You are my light, Elara. The only light in my darkness. You are the reason for my existence." I felt a surge of unease. There was something in Kael's voice, a strange serenity, as if he was preparing for a separation, a farewell. My heart tightened. That night, we slept together. I lay in Kael's arms, feeling his warmth, his scent, the smell of leather, tobacco, and warm cedarwood. I wanted time to stop, wanted to keep this moment forever. I knew this was my happiness, happiness found in the darkness, in the arms of the most dangerous man I had ever known. I fell asleep peacefully, safe in his embrace. The next morning, when I woke up, the morning sun filled the room, but the bed next to me was cold. Kael was gone. The bed next to me was cold, without his warmth. I was startled, a feeling of panic surging within me. I ran throughout the penthouse, calling his name, my voice cracking. But there was no answer. Kael had left. I found a letter on the pillow, written in his strong handwriting, a script full of determination and resolution. My heart tightened as I opened the letter, a heavy feeling pressing down on my chest. "My Elara, if you are reading this letter, it means I have gone. Don't look for me. I have done what I needed to do to secure your future, the life you deserve. My world is too dark, too dangerous for you to stay. I tried to pull you into the light, but I cannot. I am the night, and you are the light. Your light deserves to shine, not to be swallowed by my darkness, not to be tainted by my world. I have taken on all the responsibilities, all the debts, all the sins of my family. This is my atonement, not just for you, but for the lost, for the damaged souls. I have ensured that the Blackwood family will never be able to harm you again. And I have severed all my ties with the underworld, so you can have a peaceful life, unbound by my past, unburdened by the wars. Don't be sad because of me, Elara. Live a full, happy life. Love, laugh, live for me. Live for what we had, for our love. I know you will hate me for this decision. You will blame me for leaving. But believe me, this is the only way for you to be truly free, truly find happiness. I love you, Elara. I love you more than anything in this world. My love for you is eternal, unerasable by time and space. Remember me, but don't be haunted by me. Let the past rest, and build a bright future for yourself, the life you deserve. Yours, forever, Kael. I hugged the letter tightly to my chest, tears streaming down my cheeks, soaking every line of text. Kael was gone. He had sacrificed himself, sacrificed our happiness, to ensure a future for me. He had chosen the darkness for himself, so my light could shine. It was a grand sacrifice, a dark yet noble love. I didn't hate him. I couldn't hate him. I only felt an extreme pain, an irreplaceable loss, as if a part of my soul had died with him. But in that pain, I also felt a strange serenity. He had atoned. He had paid the price for everything. And he had given me a new life, a chance to start over, a life no longer haunted by darkness. Time passed, and the wound in my heart slowly healed, but it never completely disappeared. I left Kale's penthouse, returned to my normal life, but I was no longer the Alara of the past. I had changed. I had grown. I had learned to love, to forgive, and to accept. I carried a part of Kyle within me, a part of the darkness and the light. I rebuilt my life. I opened a small flower shop where I could live out my passion, surrounded by colors and gentle fragrances. Every day, I worked diligently, tending to the fresh flowers and thinking of Kyle. He was always in my heart, like a guiding light, like an eternal memory, an inseparable part of my life. A year later, I gave birth to a baby boy. I named him Kai, a name meaning ocean in Japanese, and a variation of Kyle's name. Kai had the same deep black eyes as Kyle, and a radiant smile like the sunrise, bringing hope and joy. Every time I looked at my son, I saw Kyle's reflection, saw a part of him still living. Kai was the symbol of our love, the symbol of a future built on sacrifice, a seed of hope. I no longer lived in fear. I lived in peace, in happiness, and in love for Kai. I told him about his father, about a strong, dangerous man, but also full of love. I told him about his sacrifice, about how he protected us, about the great love he had for me. Every sunset, I often took Kai to the beach, watching the waves gently kiss the shore, listening to the seagulls cry. The sound of the church bell echoed faintly from afar, bringing a melancholic but not tragic feeling, just an acceptance. I held Kai tightly in my arms, feeling his warmth, and I knew Kale was always by our side, watching over us from a distant place, where he found peace. Kale's departure was not a tragic ending, but a complete atonement, a noble sacrifice. He had sacrificed himself to give happiness to me and the next generation. Our love was not a fairy tale with a happily ever after ending, but a dark, romantic, and sacrificial love story, a true story in this world. I watched Kai laughing on the sand, his eyes sparkling under the sunset, an image of peace and happiness. I knew I would forever carry Kyle's image within me, the image of a man who loved me in his own way, a cruel yet passionate way, a possessive yet protective way. And I knew that no matter what life held, our love would remain. It was a love that overcame all barriers, all fears, and even death. It was the love of Kyle and Alara, a dark but eternal love story, forever etched in my heart,